There are a number of things to think about before you leave your current career. Today, I'm going to talk about the top 5 things that I used to help me on my way, and maybe one that was a little bit of a mistake. Let's start with the one that was probably a mistake on my part, and let's start with the idea of keeping your mouth shut. I found it very hard once I knew I was leaving, once I knew I was starting my journey to a new job, to keep that to myself and not tell everybody and anyone I came into contact with. But if I could go back and talk to previous Simon, I'd definitely tell him to just keep his mouth shut a little bit longer, keep cards nice and close to his chest right up until he had a contract in hand that was signed, because I was quite vocal at the start of my process for leaving. So when I started interviewing at different companies, that was when I made it clear that where I wasn't for me and I wasn't going to be able to stay there long term. And you see, although I said I couldn't work for British Airways any longer, I was quite happy to fly their aircraft, keep them nice and safe, and take the money at the end of each month whilst I worked my way out. So there was no need to alert them to the fact I was looking for work right up until I needed to resign and hand my resignation in. So that is definitely something I would go back and do, would be just tell the people that you're really close to, but don't broadcast it like I did. Now, British Airways is a very reputable employer. They generally treat their staff very well, and I felt there was no retribution for me making it clear that I wanted to leave. But not every employer is the same. If you work for a company that's slightly more seedy, or it's not necessarily straight down the line with the rules, you may find that letting people know that you're planning on leaving comes back to bite you, and we don't want that, obviously, until you're secure into your next move. Number 2, build a runway, if possible. Now, everyone has expenses and everyone's financial situation differs, but if you can start padding out a savings account, building yourself a little runway, it makes the whole process of changing careers that much easier. For example, right now, pause the video, jump over to your savings account. I should probably say do this and then pause the video, so let's go with that plan. Jump over to your savings account, throw 10, 20, 30, 100, £1,000, $1,000 into your savings account, whatever you can possibly afford right now, just to start that process. Number 3, don't waste time building a runway. Now, I know at number 2 I said building a runway makes everything easier, and it definitely does, but if you're in a position where saving and building out months and months worth of savings is tough, and you're incredibly unhappy where you are, at a certain point you just have to cut loose and take the break and accept that it might be harder to do. But if you're really in a position where what you're doing is making you unhappy, you just got to take the risk sometimes. So having a runway is great, but it's not essential. Don't spend years trying to build up cash reserves that will get you through months and months, because ultimately you could end up never leaving if you do that, because, for example, you manage to save $1,000 and then the boiler breaks and you have to get a new boiler and you spend $2,000 on that, and you end up just working backwards and never feeling comfortable enough to take the risk and to take the steps going forward into changing your career. And as I mentioned before, you'd be amazed how much money we end up spending on stuff that we don't really need. I don't know what the service would be in the UK, but in the US, mint.com lets you register your bank account, and it will give you a breakdown of your expenditure every week. It'll tell you that you spent 45% of your expenditure in restaurants, which is bad. Actually, if you spend time in New York restaurants, it can be cheaper than going to the supermarket, but that's a whole different story and a whole different problem with economics, which we won't go into today. So think about, do you really need that flash car that you've got on a lease? Do you really need to take Quinton skiing twice a season in the finest resorts? And do you need a house the size that you have? Or can you scale it down to ultimately boost your happiness in what you're doing in life? These are the questions that you, your significant other, and we all have as a community of people looking to change careers and taking risks in our professional world. Number 4, listen to the detractors and then ignore them. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone will have an opinion on what you're doing because it's different to what they are doing. And well, you know what they say about opinions. By taking action and changing your path, you're being braver than everyone that is a detractor in your environment. There were a number of people that British Airways thought I was crazy. They thought leaving one of the most secure jobs in aviation was foolish. Leaving a 6-figure salary was insane. Taking on a risk, taking on a gamble based on me wanting to be more fulfilled and happier in my day job. They thought I was crazy. The good thing, though, is by listening to those people tell me how crazy I was, occasionally you came across a good bit of advice. You came across someone that said, or that suggested a path or a problem that you hadn't considered. And there were a number of people that patted me on the back and said, go for it, get out there and try something different. So really listening to all of these different viewpoints and taking out the good bits, taking the snippets that were really useful, and then just discounting the rest was actually quite good fun, because you got to hear everyone's opinion and everyone. But then you just get to ignore all the things you didn't like hearing, because that's what we do. We live in an echo chamber. We all stay in our own bubbles generally. You just ignore everything that was negative, but you still took, I don't know, it's hard to say, you got something from their negativity. It helped you build out your path. So some of the feedback was incredibly encouraging, and some of my former colleagues who had changed careers before and become pilots from something else gave me advice and just suggested things I hadn't considered yet. So taking in all that wider knowledge and then just ignoring the bits that's just negative for the sake of being negative really helped me plan out where I was going. And I appreciate that. I even appreciate the people on this video that still think I'm crazy for saying that flying isn't fulfilling to me. I appreciate their input, and more power to them if they can do a job like that for 40 years. I appreciate that it's good for them. It just wasn't working out for me. Number 5. Try to find the good in the present. So I've seen people 30 years into a career, 30 years into a job with the same company, who just hate it. There was a lot of that at the 2 airlines I've worked for previously. The first airline was EasyJet, so no one had been there 30 years, but people had been there 10, 15 years, and they genuinely despised what they did. They just came in for the paycheck and went home. That's fine for some people. As mentioned, there are people that are fulfilled by this career and can do it for 40 years. But for those of us who need something more, it is such a great feeling when you finally resign, when you finally tell the company, hey, I'm out of here. Here's my 3 months notice, which now seems like an awful long time. Here's my 3 months notice, I'm off. Just knowing that this was the last time X happened, it was the last time I was going to this destination, it was the last time I was flying with this person, it made everything more enjoyable. And a lot of the nif-naf and trivia that was quite frustrating when you're looking to get out of a workplace, it disappeared. The trivial stuff that had annoyed me about British Airways was no longer a concern for me, because I knew the countdown clock had started, and it was very much the final countdown with less than 12 weeks to go. So even when I had admin nightmares with people creating problems for the sake of it, even when I had aircraft that were telling me they were incredibly broken when they weren't, and even when we had aircraft that were incredibly broken that didn't know they were such, it still made the days easier, because I knew this was the last time, or probably the last time, this was going to happen. So, to surmise, try and keep your cards close to your chest if you can. Like I said, I was very bad at this, but it might be worthwhile for you if your company or your employer aren't supportive of people moving on to their next jobs and next careers. And try and build a runway, but picture more like a stubby little aircraft carrier's runway as opposed to a space shuttle landing strip. You don't need 5 years worth of savings to take this risk, because if you do, you may never ever take it and find that in 5 years you're still unhappy where you are, and you have a pot of savings that you can't really utilize too much because you're not confident enough to take the risk. And by risk, of course, I mean change careers and find what really is your passion and something that fulfills you day to day. Then listen to all the feedback you can get and just take the bits that are useful and positive. And there are so many people that just won't understand why you are leaving something stable and secure. So ignore the people that are negative and detractors, and just try and pinch out those little bits of feedback that can be useful to you and your plan. And remember, this move, it's for you. It's for you, your family, and the people in your life that want the best for you. Now, there'll be a number of people you work with that, frankly, they don't care how your life turns out. And they're not fussed. And they simply won't understand what is driving you to break free of where you are right now. So thank you to all of the subscribers. As of today, the 10th of October, I think there's 50 subscribers, and I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so much. We are building a community of like-minded people that are looking to change career. We will all go through problems and difficult times with it. So if you are struggling with something, if you heard some negativity and it's knocked your confidence entirely, put a comment down below and we will help you. I will certainly do my best to help you with any problems that you have, and I'm sure the community will come together and support you as we continue to grow. If you've not subscribed yet, please consider hitting the subscribe button and maybe knocking the bell as well, and stay up to date with videos that come out every Tuesday. That's the plan, and so far it seems to be working out. This is a big journey for all of us, and it's going to take time for every single one of us to transition out of where we are to ultimately where we are going. Thank you for sticking with me, and I'll see you again next week.